Hi, welcome back. Let's continue with our coding example. I hope everybody was able to solve the program, and some of you have found some mistakes in the program that I have given in the last lecture. Nevertheless, let's move ahead and understand the problem statement again. So, the problem statement was that find the first positive integer whose sum of digits is 10. So, when I say sum of digits, it means that you have to add the digits of that particular number. For example, consider the number 12. So 1 plus 2 is 3. So we are looking for a number whose sum of the digits is 10. For example, 19. 1 plus 9 is 10. So we have to find the first number whose sum of the digits is 10 based on the input given by the user. Let me clarify one more time. If the user input is 2 to the program, let's say the user inputs 2 as an input, the program starts scanning from 2 and onwards 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and so on till it encounters the first number whose sum of the digits is 10. In this case, the first number that it encounters is 19. If you look at the number 19 and add the digits 1 plus 9, that is 10. Now, here's the surprise part. If you give user input as 15, in the last lecture, I told that the output should be 28, which is wrong. The output will be 19 because after 15, the first number whose sum of the digits is 10 will be 19 and not 28. Obviously, 28 is also 2 plus 8 is 10, but 19 comes before 28. Now, I did it on purpose. And those of who got this problem statement correctly, congratulations. Those of you who didn't understand the problem statement, congratulations to you as well, because now you're going to learn how to handle this particular situation. So let's move on. What you should have done in this case. The first thing you should ask yourself, did you understand the problem statement? The moment the interviewer gives you this problem statement and asks you to code, you should ask yourself, did you understand the problem statement? What is expected? If not, ask for clarification to the interviewer. Can you explain me the problem statement again with more examples? This is what you can ask him, or whatever suits you. Like, ask him the way you want to. Like, I did not understand the problem statement. Can you give me more example? And let him explain again and pay attention this time. Now, let's say he says n for this, in this case, the second input n is equal to 15. I had given the wrong output. If you figure it out that the interviewer is looking at the wrong output, feel free to highlight to him and tell him that when the input is 15, 28 cannot be the output. In fact, the output will be 19. He'll be more than happy to accept your answer, and he'll know that you have actually got the problem statement. So the net summary in this case is, if you didn't understand the problem statement, ask for clarifications. And in case if there is some ambiguity between what the interviewer is telling by himself, he's giving a wrong example, feel free to highlight that as well. Next thing, call out for any assumptions you are making. So let's say you start coding and you are assuming that it will be only a two-digit number in this case. The input number that the user will give will only be two digit. Call out that assumption before you start coding. Then the next thing, don't rush to complete the code. Some of you might not be aware, but it's totally okay to take even 15 minutes to write the piece of code. You might be thinking that you're taking more time, but that is not the case at all. Some coding examples, especially if you're applying for a product-based organization, the problem statements are really complex. Like, let's say, data structure or linked list examples, they will be complex. They cannot be written in 5 minutes. So it's fine, take 15, 20 minutes based on the examples. And what is going to happen when you're coding is that the interviewer is going to check on you. He might ask you to show what you have written, and he'll just take a look at your screen if you're sharing it on Zoom or Skype. He's continuously watching you. Or he might also ask you to think aloud, or think or maybe in between try to ask you like, hey, what's this for loop for, or what is this particular variable doing? That is totally fine. But the net summary is that do not rush to complete the code. Take your time and try to write a good code. Try to add those comments, good variable names, good function names, and then complete the code. Now, let's say you are using your own editor, PyCharm for Python or Java, Eclipse for Java. And if you want to run the program, actually run the program, then ask for permission. Do not run without asking him. Some interviewers do not like it. It's fine that you are using an editor of your choice, but Sometimes if you run and debug, then you can actually solve the problem, but they really want to know how you have written it in the first place. So ask for permission before you run and debug. Okay. And check on multiple inputs and output before you tell the interviewer that, hey, I am done. And in case if you are in position, if the interviewer says, okay, run and debug it, and then let me know, test it for multiple inputs. So in this case, you can test it for 2 as an input, 50 as an input, 75 as an input. So have you done that when you came to this lecture? That's one question I wanted to ask you. How much time you took to write this particular program? Ask yourself. Okay, did you make any assumption when I gave you the problem statement? Ask yourself. Did you understand the problem statement? No. Did you think of I should ask in the next lecture what this particular problem statement was, or I was not clear on this problem statement? So this is what you should think. Now moving on to the next slide, we are still continuing with this coding problem statement, which is input is n is equal to 2 and output is 19. Now here's what the interviewer is going to do next. Let's say you write this piece of code and it is running fine. Now he's going to test your ability to make changes to an existing solution. And what he's going to do, first thing, he's going to ask you like, does your program work for a 3-digit or 4-digit input? Like let's say I give the input as 100. In this case, I am expecting output to be 109 because 1 plus 0 plus 9 is 10. So guys, folks, the program that you have written before coming to the lecture, is it working for a 3-digit input or a 4-digit input like 1000? If not, I think go ahead and make the changes and make the program working for any input. That's how you should do it. He's going to ask you to make one, he can ask you to make one more change. Now, the initial problem statement said that print the first number whose sum of the digit is 10. Now he can ask you to change the program. Hey, skip the first number. I want the second number whose sum of the digits is 10. So if the input number is 2, 19 is not going to be output. In that case, 28 will be the output because we are going to skip the first number whose sum of digits is 10. And we are going to look for the second number whose sum of the digits is 10. So in case of input 2, the output will be 28. Can you guys change that program for yourself? How much time you are going to take for that? That is something I really want you to evaluate after this lecture. So do take a note of these two questions, whether your program works for 2 or 3 or 4-digit input, and can you change the program to print the second number from the given input. Now here's the tricky one. Why second? I want to print the nth number from a given input. How do I make the changes to the program? So every time I cannot keep on changing, right? Second number or third number from the given input of the user. So maybe you can accept the input from the user itself that, hey, do you want to print the second number whose sum of the digit is 10 or the third number whose sum of the digit is 10? So you can make the changes to the program accordingly. Now he's going to ask you the time complexity of the code, particularly in the case where you are using while loops, multiple for loops, a data structure linked list program. He's going to ask you what is the time complexity of the program. This might be very common question in product organizations, maybe not in the services based organization interview. That, hey, tell me the time complexity of the program. Let's say it is O of n or O of n square. He's going to ask you, hey, can you remove that while loop or 2 for loops and change it into single loop? Can you reduce the time complexity of your program? And that's where you'll have to go back to your code and start updating it again to reduce the time complexity. Okay, so that was about coming back to the original slide. So that was about how the interviewer is going to judge your code. In the first place, the code should be running, obviously. And then if at all you write the piece of code, he's going to make you change that piece of code. And he's going to test your ability to understand your own code and what changes it needs. Why he's going to do that? Because in most of the IT organizations, there's already a big chunk of code written. And when you're put on a particular project, sometimes it's not really something from scratch you're starting. It's already there and you have to understand the existing code and then start making changes to it. So that's where these questions, this ability to make changes to the code, you are being tested for. Now, in the resources section, I have some links to websites where they have lots of algorithms and coding questions. So do check it out. I'm not affiliated to any of the links that are there in the resources section, but I thought it should be handy to you. Some of you might already know those particular websites. Then there is also a link to the website which has lots of questionnaire bank that were asked in the interview at different organizations. So do take a look at that as well. Then I have this HackerRank link where you can go and try to solve coding problems. I have a link for basic concepts of software testing. And there's also a link to the answer to the question that is asked in this lecture. So the actual code, you can find it in the link in the resources section. So the summary of this whole lecture is, first, don't give up easily on the coding question. Let's say you're not able to write that piece of code. You tried something, but it's not running. Or worst case, really the worst case, that you are not able to write the code, but you know the logic. So ask for permission. Can I explain you the pseudocode? This will definitely work in services organization, maybe not work in the product organization. I'm being a little frank here. But in services, you can at least try to explain the pseudocode, what kind of logic, for loops, what you would do in the for loop or in that particular method. You can try explaining to the interviewer. Second, add comments and proper naming convention. Follow all the coding guidelines here when you're writing the piece of code to make a good impression. Third, ask questions to the interviewers rather than making assumptions. So we already discussed that if you didn't understand the problem statement, or if you're going ahead with certain assumption, it could be a big program of a file operation program or a mathematical problem statement, which might need you to make an assumption. It's very highly likely. So call out that assumption and then go ahead. Uh, for example, in my cases, most of the candidates ask me, can I assume that the input is in a variable X, or I have already read the file and it is in a string variable named file content. To which sometimes I'm say, okay, let's do that. Let's keep the reading the file input and move on to the core logic of the program. That's one thing. Fourth point, ask for permission to run and debug the code. Not every interviewer is comfortable with that, as I said. So ask for permissions. You can put the breakpoints, debug your code if you have written the code and the output is not correct. Debug it, fix it, run it again, and then show it to the interviewer. And last, if you know unit testing, ask if you should add the unit test cases to the program. If you're good with NUnit, JUnit, or Python's unit testing, ask to the interviewer, should I add the unit test cases to this? He's going to say no for that most likely, but he'll be impressed with that. Trust me on that. So that's it about this coding or software developer or software testing coding example interview session. And see you in the next session, guys. Thank you.